I'll just move it over.
How are you feeling over there in the corner? Good? Great. And then, is it possible to have?
Yeah.
Are you, on you? And is it connected to you? Should I set up or you want me to
It can take me a second.
Okay.
I can do it, yeah.
Whatever you
But you know what? Maybe it's better for you.
Yeah?
I will move it around.
Okay, so why don't you set up and then...
Yeah, she wants to run it this way, and then she's bringing a different tape. She said she has better tape. I don't know what that means. It's definitely long enough. It's more than long enough. Okay.
You're the expert. Well, how's the sound going to be?
I think it's going to be the room sound, but hopefully when everyone quiets down and the microphone's going to be projecting, they'll hear it like that.
Well, should we make it closer?
Can you?
Make it closer?
That's a good question. Maybe not. Oh, yeah.
For you.
Okay. All right. So let's shift it a little for that. Okay.
Even closer?
If you like.
That's as close as it gets.
Great. Okay, good. I'm just going to check the number. So happy to see you. And I have the tape because she's not bringing it to me. I'd rather use your tape.
Together. That sounds pretty good. Okay. How's the sound?
hear it, but I don't know about the room. First, you have to make sure it's okay for the room.
עוד פעם, לא שומעים. לא שומעים.
Okay. Great. Okay, amazing. Great. Am I monitoring this here or no? This kid's independent, but they're both back.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Can everyone be quiet for a second? I want to see if we can hear the rabbi. She's going to move it? Oh, okay.
Should I hook it
Sorry, everyone. But
So,
I want to make sure we can hear her.
Does it matter if you see it or you don't see it?
I don't think it matters. You know, you can do like on the outer lapel or whatever's comfortable. Can you just like hit it for me? Yeah, okay, good. Great, amazing. Thank you, Adam.
Try it. It's better? Is it better? It's better?
Better, אבל צריך יותר חזק.
Okay.
Louder, louder.
Louder? Sounds good.
That's fine. I'm not going to run it behind.
I would just when things quiet down a little bit,
Yeah.
I would just tell Liat if she wants to give you more tape or if she wants to.
Yeah, I'm going to keep it down pretty well.
Yeah, but if she wants to go over with her own. Yeah, just if you want to like check in with him, make sure everything looks okay, like he's feeling okay. All the way across the room, so it's hard to go back and forth. But I think
I can tell him that he can text you if there's anything done, right?
yeah.
special viewing here?
Sorry?
Do I get a special viewing here?
Oh yeah, the really super tiny viewing.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Hey, how are you?
Good, good.
God, it's so hot in here.
It's so hot. We walked out and I was like, oh, okay.
No, I told you to turn it off. There's no reason to have heat on.
No, and it'll be a room full of people, so it's gonna get really hot.
Hey, how are you?
Sorry, it was a little bit like crazy there for a minute. I know, right? We walked in, I was like, oh my god. How are you?
How are you? Nice to see you. Seeing your professional.
You know, I'm trying to move them.
Thank you, get paid.
I didn't see you there Tuesday. Yeah, you were one behind me. She's taking my jump
Yeah, as soon as we walked upstairs.
Want to sit here? Or you want to sit? I think she saves seats in the front for us. But
Oh, yeah. So you'll probably hear him better.
wonderful memory.
So nice you guys came.
Yeah, she turned off the turn off the on like
They'll probably hear.
I want to call you. I'll call you tomorrow.
questions, just to text you. You just want to know the overview of the program, like I told her, she's going to start off by doing 45 minutes for the grandfather, and then a Q&A. For you. The question that your grandmother was like cooking before, she's not here. So you're asking about how sweaty. Yeah, no, I think
I know, we have to meet.
wait, what's that?
I know, that's why. So when I come back, well, Elliot's leaving on Saturday night. Also because oh my
somebody else is like doing a live stream, so I just connected them to me so I don't have to try to
Very serious stuff. It's really hard to come.
Good evening, everybody. On behalf of Oshra and Matan, I'm excited to welcome you all to what I know is going to be an inspirational, thought-provoking, and enlightening evening. This evening is going to be split into two parts. In the first part, we'll be given a lecture by Rabbi Yitz Greenberg, following which we'll open the floor to questions. In the second part, the second shorter part of the evening, we're going to be affording the Torat Chayim JJ Greenberg Young Leadership Award to Emuna Klein Bar-Noy. Goody will say a few words about the prize and its significance, and Emuna will share a few short ideas, thoughts about her activities. We ask that where possible, people remain seated till the end of the evening. Matan HaSharon, the Mindy Greenberg Institute for Women's Torah Study, acts as a second home for so many here in Renana and the surrounding area. Thanks to the open and enriching environment fostered by its visionary founder and director, Oshra Koren. Having Rav Yitz come and deliver his life thought and work feels like my two worlds and passions coming together. For as many of you know, he is the subject of my doctoral research, and I am passionate about the message he has to offer. I feel privileged and blessed to be studying the thought of a person who doesn't just preach a theory, but embodies everything he believes. The idea of Tzelem Elokim, a deep humanity, an authentically lived Judaism, shines from his face and emanates from his actions. There is only one word that truly encapsulates Rav Yitz, a pure mensch. I am humbled to know and study his thinking, and I hope tonight you will share in my enthusiasm. Known as one of the greatest thinkers and activists in Jewish life in America in the last century, Rav Yitz's achievements in Jewish and interfaith dialogue, as well as in promoting tolerance, pluralism, and religious passion amongst all kinds of Jews is legendary. His post-Holocaust thought, and more recently his postmodern thought, is utterly novel and a voice that is desperately needed in these challenging times. Rav Yitz's credentials and achievements include the founding of Klal, the conceiving and supervising the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, as well as many more positions and achievements. Social, academic, and religious. And if I started listing them, we'd be here all night. So instead, I'm not going to take any more time away from his lecture. I will let his thought speak for itself. So ladies and gentlemen, my inspiration and the man behind the religious passion and thinking of so many dynamic Jewish leaders and personalities, Rabbi Yitz Greenberg.
Thank you very much, Tanya. I want to thank Oshra Koren and Matan. Obviously, the Greenbergs are very deeply identified with Matan and its work, its principles, beliefs, the leadership and dream of women learning and women participating fully in Torah speaks for itself. But of course, we have that special, personal, sad but deep connection in that this house is dedicated to the memory of Mindy Greenberg. So it's a privilege. What I'd like to share with you tonight is a kind of a one-foot summary of a book that I've been working on for the last 10 years. And I won't summarize the whole book because it would be here for another 10 years, but I will try to focus on three elements in the book, really. One is an attempt to re-articulate what is Judaism's vision, what's its message for the world, on the theory that we have so many challenges and so many distinctive, really, questions we're all wrestling with, and traditional Jews more than most, because we are torn between this profound sense of this great tradition that we uphold and we are loyal to and want to protect, and our gut feeling that in many areas and many issues that come up, there's a need for new guidance, for new directions, for new applications. So it becomes even more challenging to us to live up to this. So I felt the best way to tackle this would be to ask ourselves again, what's the big vision? What's the main purpose of the whole thing? And then if you can recapture the forest, maybe we can then figure out how we can deal with each tree in its particular detail. The second element tonight is, if we have a vision, and I believe it is a vision for the whole world, what's the method of achieving it, getting there? Judaism has a remarkable combination, I think, of a visionary, utopian, radical, revolutionary vision for the world, combined with a remarkably conservative, small c, personal, gradualist, incremental method. And I think that's part of its success, so it's promise for the world. The third element will be what stage we're in right now, which I think we're living in a very particular, remarkable era, and one in which we have a very special set of possibilities and challenges. So let me get to the point. What is Judaism's vision, and what is the message for the whole world? So in one phrase, I would say, this world is a creation. Another way of saying it, the Torah says it, it's meant to be a Garden of Eden. It's meant to be a paradise. But now it is not. If you look around at this world we're living in, it's certainly not a paradise at this point. But this is the message of Yahadut. It can be, and it will be, if it is repaired, if it is perfected, or let's put it another way, we'll move from this ideal of creation, which we see in the first chapter of the Torah, toward an actual realization in human history, in this world of flesh and blood. With all its flaws, it can be repaired and perfected. And in fact, that's what our religion predicts. That with the help of God and humanity partnering together, the messianic area, the perfection of the world will be achieved. If I can show that in the slide, and trying to hope of, in a sense, what I'm saying is the main message of Judaism is very straight. You're going from creation to redemption. Geulah. Redemption is the fulfillment, the concretization of the creation, of the ideal creation in the real world, through the covenant, which I'll come back to because that's the method of partnership. Second way of showing the same picture. Second way, next slide. We're going from creation to redemption through covenant. Okay, we'll come back to that in just a moment. Now, in halachic man, I mean, it's good. The Gemara says if you want to hang your thought on a tree, hang it on a great tree. So I'd like to hang this on the thought of Rabbi Yosef B. Soloveitchik in halachic man. And he points out that the Torah starts with creation. Now, I want to remind you, Rashi said the question. Why does the Torah start with creation? It should start with the first mitzvah, which is which is chapter 12 of Exodus, or it should start with the first Jew, Abraham, but that's chapter 11 or 12 of Bereshit. But it doesn't. It starts literally with the first second of creation. Why? Because the Torah is not meant to be a religion for the Jewish people, a tribe, of a local group. It's a vision of how the whole world will be perfected, and for all humanity, not just the Jewish people. This is the Messianic vision. What the Torah and Halakha is, then I argue, is the guidelines, how to live the life, how every act in your personal life, and every human life, can be part of the process of perfecting the world, or if you will, of Tikkun Olam. Or to quote Rabbi Soloveitchik, the dream of creation is the central idea in halachic consciousness. The idea of the importance of man as partner of the Almighty in the works of creation and Masa Breshit. And again, the ultimate aim of Judaism. And again, sometimes you listen to a student, it appears that you could have wondered where's the connection between that and the halachic detail that they're focused on. But the ultimate aim of Judaism, the telos, the goal of halakha, in all its aspects and its manifestations, in the most trivial minhagim, if you will, is the vision of the end of days, the Messianic, which is the realization of all the Jewish people's hopes. Okay, that brings me to slide 3, I think. It doesn't bring me flight. Okay, we'll move on. Okay, good. This is, of course, I just show how the Torah, creation is so important. The Torah starts with Bereshit, but it comes back and tells the story again and again and again. And if you look at the tefillot of daily life, you will discover again what you discover. Chazal have placed in the tefillah a constant, repetitive theme of reminding people of creation. If you want to know what God, you know what Torah is about, remind yourself of creation. Before the Shema, the first bracha of the two brachot, Mari Baravim Yatzaron, is a bracha of creation. And one could go on and on. So this is, and of course, in creation, the most important idea, as Yeshayahu says, is life itself, and I'll come to that in just a moment. So let's take another moment to look at the idea of creation, what it really means. Number one, obviously, this is the major impact of Jewish people on the whole world, not just on ourselves. Creation means that there is a creator. We call God Hashem and many other names, the world calls by many other names. Although, and this is the Jewish point, God is invisible, not measurable, not physically detectable, not something you can point to, and yet we insist Hashem is a universal presence, the ground and source of life, the sustainer of all existence. So in a sense, Judaism is teaching the whole world, not just us, that you can't live just on the physical or surface level. If you don't understand the deeper levels of existence, you're missing a good part. It's like seeing a 2D instead of a 3D version of reality. Secondly, creation means that this world is not the accidental outcome of a blind, random physical process with no values or no goals. And that's, of course, a very serious, plausible interpretation, particularly in modern science. Rather, we teach that creation, it is a creation. It's like a work of art or of music. It is to be, it was shaped in a special way. It is to be savored, appreciated, and understood as you would a work of art, to sense its power, its pattern, its wonder, is the way you look at the world. No less important, it is a creation, a unified creation. It has unified laws. It has remarkable built-in properties which humans can identify and can utilize, and in fact can use to perfect the world, following and carrying out the divine plan for repairing the world. And the third and not least element of the creation story is that Hashem, who is the creator and who has goals and outcomes and values in this creation, has built into the world, into nature, into creation, fundamental rhythms. 3 fundamental rhythms which we not only can identify in the Torah, but are meant to copy and live by. The first is, in talking Bereshit chapter 1, the main story of creation, the world is moving from chaos to order. It starts with tohu, vavohu, chaos, void, and it concludes at the end of creation with Shabbat, perfect order, harmony, and perfect order, harmony, and a unified whole. That's the first great movement of creation. And of course, we don't see it in our eyes. We see the world that goes the other way. It starts orderly in the morning. My desk is very neat in the morning, and by 4 o'clock, it's a total catastrophe and chaos. But that's because you're human and you're limited. If you look at the world from the divine perspective, it's moving from chaos to Big Bang, 15 billion years ago. Everything was totally chaotic. There was nothing that could exist. 15 billion years later, we've gone through energy era, matter era, period, and so on and so forth. Again, I don't want to go through all the details of how the Torah shows it, but that's the first main message that the Torah gets across. Look at it from the divine perspective, you'll see this world is moving from chaos to order, and you should be part of that process. The second rhythm, of course, is it's moving from non-life to life. Now here again, it's not the way humans experience reality. When I look at reality, I mean, frankly, the whole life insurance industry is based on my perception. that when you're born, you start to die. And since we're all going to die, we want to have insurance to protect our family. So that's the human perspective, because we live 80, 90, 70 years, and that's our time. If you look from the divine perspective, it's the opposite. The world started with no life. According to the best estimates now, it was 14 billion years before the first one-celled forms of life appeared on the earth. Now, in the last billion years, life has had a tremendous explosion and proliferation, and that's the point. If you look at the world from divine perspective, the world is moving from non-life to life. Even though every living thing dies along the way, it's life that has grown and multiplied. And you're supposed to not only identify this process, but as a human being, join it. Live, act, create life on the side of life. The third great rhythm, again, sorry, back just 1 second. I want to point to Yeshayahu's comment. Yeshayahu's comment is Lo Tohu V'Rag. This is the word of God, says, this is Yeshayahu's interpretation of creation. Lo Tohu V'Rag, it was not created to be empty and void. La Shevet Yetzorah, it is to be filled with life, to be settled with. That's the goal, that this creation should become full of life. Come back to that in a moment. The third dimension, which we see in creation story, is that life itself is growing not just quantitatively, but qualitatively. And again, think back to the amoeba, the one-celled animal, compared to the development of more and more complex creatures, to human beings. So highly developed, so formidable, so godlike. That's what the Torah language is. That the Torah speaks of the human form of life as a tzelem Elokim, as an image of God. And here are all the qualities of God. And as life develops, it becomes more and more capable, more and more godlike. So this development of human being in the image of God and of life in its highest and richest form is a crucial element in creation, which we not only identify, but identify with. It's my responsibility, or yours as humans, to work on the development not only of quantity of life, that's what Pruvahu and children is about, but quality of life, to develop the mind, to bring out the depth of a consciousness, to develop freedom, to the extent that we are free and we have free will, to the extent that we can make choices, and we're not conditioned, we're not brainwashed, we're not repressed. We are becoming more godlike. And that is the task of a parent or of a teacher, to develop the human capacity. So the human beings are instructed by the Torah. This is another way of saying the same thing. We don't think of it in these terms, but that's what it's getting at. The commandments, the mitzvot, the instructions are attempts to guide us. How do I live my life on the side of order, life order, as against chaos, which means death order? How do I live my life on the side of order, even on every little detail? If you live your life with rhythm and responsibility and control, if you sleep adequately, you will live. If you overextend, overexert, lose control, you end up in a kind of chaos that is the opposite, it undermines the life. So my responsibility, religiously, if I understand the world correctly, is to live my life on the side of order of life itself. Second example is to live on the side of life. This life, there was a long period, there was no life, now there is life. How do I join in? The answer is, I have to identify my capacity to create life and create it. Secondly, I have to identify what acts of mine, literally, are life-giving as against acts that are undermining of life, and I have to act accordingly. And I want to argue again, if there was time, I would gladly go through detail by detail. That's what takes 10 years. Literally, I think every mitzvah, every commandment is trying to get us to focus on behavior on the side of life as against the side of non-life or death. And similarly, the third and last, every mitzvah is trying to get us to develop our godlike capacity. Our godlike capacity of mind. So when you develop your mind, you're not just developing your mind, you're not just doing an intellectual exercise. What you're trying to do is to bring your mind into harmony and imitation of God. Just as God has Tehuna, it says, we say in the Tefillot and Tehillim every day, Litvunato ein cheker. God has unlimited consciousness, infinite consciousness. Every detail of the universe is within God's perception. As a human being, how do I become more godlike? I develop my capacity to know the universe, to understand it. I'll give one of my favorite examples. In my lifetime, as it happened, that's why it's one of my favorite examples. In my lifetime, two human beings named Watson and Crick decoded DNA. The code of DNA. What's the DNA? It's the code of life. It's the code that directs the cell to develop and become the various forms of life. Now here again, understand what Watson and Crick did. They did not invent the code. That's what Hashem has done, and built into the universe this incredible and sophisticated and complex code of life. But it's God-like, it's a kind of Etzel Elokim, that these human beings could decode that code. And of course, behind the decoding came the capacity for genetic engineering, for improving health, for stopping or eliminating certain kinds of sicknesses. That is the process of the human being joining in on the side of the rhythm of quality of life that Hashem has called every human being to do. So, you might say the climax of this understanding is that the human being in the image of God is the highest form of life so far. This may be an out-of-date speech in about 1 million years or so, or a couple of million years, who knows. It's only 40,000 years that they developed the capacity to drink milk, right? It's a mutation that's for the young ones. But the point is, the most highest developed form of life, human being, is that we're part of that process. We're part of the process of the world becoming more God-like, and we are supposed to join and advance that cause. If you dumb down your mind, then you are going against the rhythms of nature that God has called us to do. Now, as life develops, it has dignity, it has value, it has respect, and we are called upon to exercise proper respect and dignity and following. And so the Mishnah, in Mishnah Sanhedrin, tries to tell us what is the value, what's the dignity that you're supposed to show to every human being in the image of God. And of course, okay. Yeah, good. So this is the Mishnah. First of all, this is the Torah's language, right? And God created the human being in the image of God. In the image of God, God created them male and female, Sel Elokim, both a male and female. Now, what does it mean, Sel Elokim? As Rabbi Soloveitchik points out in Psalm 8, we are told, but Chasreo Me'at Elokim, literally, human beings are less than God, we're not God. It's one of our challenges to know that we're God-like and we should become more God-like, but we're not God. But nevertheless, something God-like is what we're supposed to be to make ourselves. And the Mishnah further goes in the next Mishnah, the next slide. The Mishnah tells us that if you are Etzel Elokim, God has endowed every Etzel Elokim with 3 fundamental dignities. And those are built into every human being in the image of God. And one of these 3 dignities, the first is that infinite value that every human being teaches to anyone who saves one life, right? It's as if you save the whole world. Thanks to Steven Spielberg, that is now one of the famous lines of rabbinic tradition, right? But what does the Mishnah mean to say if you save one life, it's like saving the world? How can saving one life be the equivalent of saving 7 billion lives? The answer, I say, is because the Mishnah is saying each human being is infinitely valuable. If you save one life, you saved an infinity. If you save 7 billion lives, you saved an infinity. That's the analogy. Now, what does it mean to say I'm infinitely valuable? What it means is, as a human being, no amount of money is too much to help my life, to save my life, to heal my life. This is not a problem in Israel as it is in America. No one should ever lack health insurance, so they can't afford to go to They go into the hospital and they get sick and they die simply because they didn't have the money for adequate medical insurance. Every human life should be treated as if there's an unlimited amount of money necessary. That's what you do to heal them or to protect them. Obviously, we're not able to do it yet, but that's the goal. The second dignity of every Tzelem Elokim is equality. Well, it's obvious. If I'm infinitely valuable and you are, you can't be more equal than me. But it's a deeper point. It's really trying to say that every Tzelem Elokim, every image of God is equal, first of all, as we saw in the first pasuk, because men and women are in fact equal. They're not yet in the real world, they're not yet in the legislative world, they're not yet in the halakha. But that's the goal, and that's what the ideal creation that Hashem has created. And there is no preferred image of God. That's the amazing thing. We're not allowed to make a fixed image of God. When a human being is an image of God, that means that God is not white or black or colored. God is not a male, and God is not a female. God is not a Jew, and God is not a Gentile. There is no preferred image of God. Every one of those human beings is an image of God. And to claim that God is in fact a male, or a Jew, or you name it, is a form of idolatry. Idolatry takes a picture of God and says this is a fixed image of God, and it's the superior version. So every human being should be seen as and should be treated as equal, fully. And the third dignity built in every when you recognize a Tzelem Elokim, you should recognize this is a creature with uniqueness. That's the third dignity. Again, to use the Mishnah's language, human beings create molds, create stamps, create all kinds of presses. They come out identical. Each image is identical. But it's Tzelem Elokim, an image created by God, an image of God. We all come from Adam and Eve, but each one is unique. So you and every human being who's preceded you is unique. There's no one like you. No one will ever be able to replace you. If I'm a teacher, I have to hear that so I know the difference between this child and that child. If I'm a parent, to know the difference and to hear the uniqueness of each child, and so on down history. The opposite of respecting uniqueness is stereotype. All Jews are. All Arabs are. All blacks are. That's the stereotype that denies itself. So the outcome of our goal is not only to recognize these dignities, next slide, the goal of Tikkun Olam, of repairing the world, is that these three dignities, infinite value, equality, and uniqueness, next slide, will be, in fact, I thought there was a slide in between, will be in fact recognized. That's the crucial point I'm making. What will repair of the world, what will perfection mean? We'll have improved the world so that in fact everybody will be treated as infinitely valued. Everybody will be treated as equal. And as I said before, right now we couldn't even afford it. In the United States of America, 30 years ago, they passed a special law to recognition that people were dying of kidney failure because they couldn't afford the treatment. So they passed a law guaranteeing their treatment. Well, what happened was an explosion of kidney dialysis, and they had said there's not going to be money left to treat cancer, not going to be money left. So the truth is you have to make a much richer world, but that is our goal. Our goal is to create a world where someday, in practice, in law, in politics, in the economy, every human being will be treated as equal, as unique, as infinitely valuable. That, in fact, is the outcome and the goal of Yahadut. That's Yahadut's vision, that this will be realized. This is not just a pipe dream, nor is it going to happen in the world to come. It's going to happen in this world if we do our homework. And of course, that brings me to the very notion of Tikkun Olam, which again, many Orthodox Jews have become suspicious of. Somehow there's Tikkun Olam sounds like Reform Judaism, or maybe it sounds like liberal democratic politics. It's not. It's the Messianic vision if you understand that it means not just social justice, which it means, not just equality of all people, which it means, but literally a Messianic age where everybody's needs, where everybody is met with equal dignity and equal value. So in the world of Messianic era, this is the Nevi'im speaking now. To get to the Messianic age, we're going to have to overcome poverty. Yeshayahu predicts that we're going to overcome poverty. And again, what's the connection of overcoming poverty to Torah? My answer is that's central to its vision. So the people who are startup nation or creating new wealth, creating jobs that give people dignity, self-value, are making a major contribution to what the Navi says will someday be a world where there will be no poverty, there will be prosperity like a flooding river. And we will overcome all the enemies of life, not just poverty but hunger, not just hunger but oppression. Yeshayahu predicts that in the Messianic age, everybody will have equal justice before the law. I will resist the temptation to make jokes about that. No matter how high you are in government, or no matter how low you are in the society, all will be equal before the law. Okay? In fact, again, and I say with all respect, the truth is, even in the best democracies in the world, if you're rich, you can afford a better lawyer, you'll get a better deal in court. But in the Messianic age, there will be full equality, no more oppression, no more distortion. Everybody will get equal, and finally, and not least, we will overcome war. Because again, in an imperfect world, war is legitimate to defend yourself. But in a perfect world, how do you win a war? You win a war by destroying Sel Elohim, by unique individuals who can't be replaced. The answer is, in the Messianic age, we'll overcome war. So the Jewish dream, and that's part of being a serious religious Jew, is to overcome poverty or hunger, or war, or oppression. But why stop at such an easy accomplishment? If you push through the next slide, right? The Nevi'im Yeshayahu predicts, will overcome sickness. Will cure every sickness and every disease. The lame will dance, the deaf will hear, the blind will see. This will cure them. And then you say, why? But my answer is, take any of these diseases. How about Alzheimer's? When it robs the memory, it robs uniqueness. It takes away the dignity of itself. So we're going to have to cure Alzheimer's on the way to the Messianic age. And the people doing that research should be recognized as important scouts or workers in the labor and vineyard of the Lord. Now when you say, you're ready to settle for settling, for curing all diseases? No, that's too early. The Navi goes on to say, the next slide, the ultimate dream of the Torah. Yeshayahu's dream is, not Yeshayahu's dream, it's the Torah's dream, it's the Nevi'im's dream. We're going to overcome death itself. After all, death takes away infinitely valuable, unique, equal creatures. And when I first sort of realized this is the message, I held back. I said, don't think I'm crazy. So he thinks we're going to overcome death, over the top, a little off his rocker. But it's not so. The Nevi'im take this very seriously. That, no less than that, is the goal, to overcome all the enemies of life. That's why the Torah's vision of the Messianic age is to overcome all the enemies of life. And if you think that I'm exaggerating, please go to the next slide. That's why I decided I'm going to hold out for overcoming death. Because what do Chazal say? We're not going to settle for stopping a minor, it would be a good accomplishment. No more death. But what do Chazal say is central to our tradition. Tchiyat HaMeitim. And by the way, you haven't paid attention, but if you're davening every day, 3 times a day, it's the second bracha and the key hatfilah, the key prayer of the Jewish people. The moment you're standing in God's presence, you affirm Tchiyat HaMeitim. Resurrection, we're going to cancel out retroactively every. I had time to discuss this in greater detail with you, but I certainly understand if you ever had the experience. You don't wish anybody of losing somebody you love, totally irreplaceable. You understand the real power of resurrection. You're not talking about in the afterlife we'll have a neshama and we'll get together again. But that's not the person. The person that I love was a physical, human, flawed, and frankly, they're irreplaceable. There's only one thing that is replaceable: resurrection. So again, I'm not for the moment convinced you it's going to happen tomorrow. I'm just saying Yahadut's dream is to create a world where through medicine, through industry, through life, through religion, through economy, politics, we create a world in which we literally will overcome the forces of death and fill the world with life. Okay, now if you followed me this far and you haven't gone off the top, let me now talk about the method. In fact, I'll make it shorter. What's the method to get there? I mean, it's brilliant. I love it. I mean, who would want to not join a religion that says we can make the world perfect and overcome poverty and overcome sickness? I mean, sign me up, gladly. The real challenge becomes, how do you get there? In fact, let me go a step further. We have lived in the last 200 years through a period where world movements of tremendous power arose and said just what I said. They can overcome all the enemies of life, they overcome poverty, they make everybody equal. And what is this grand list of great movements? Communism, Stalinism, Nazism. Nazism promised we're going to national socialism, we're going to make everybody equal, we're going to cure the problems of poverty, but it's to be national, one unified people. Make the world perfect. The point is, when you set out to make the world perfect, it's an imperfect world, and you set out to make people perfect, and they're imperfect too. If you don't watch it, that becomes a driving force to do anything, to justify anything. So what communism then decided to do is to override all human beings. Maoism, who has the right? He came to make women equal. So how you have no right to argue women shouldn't be equal? So we're going to put you in a concentration camp, or we're going to kill you. Or Hitler's case, in order to make a perfect world, so we'll murder millions of Jews. That'll be the next step toward making the world perfect. So how do you offer a vision of perfection, redemption, without leading to these excesses and these inhuman behaviors? Here the Jewish answer is, the method is everything. The means, in the case of Maoism, Khmer Rouge, or you name it. The means, oppression, violence, destruction, in fact, ended up defeating the goal of this ideal world. What Yahadut says is you have to take a different method. It's a partnership method. It's what we call Brit, covenant. It's partnership. It's partnership between God and humans. It's also partnership between the generations, because no one generation can accomplish it. So in a sense, there's no point starting unless the next generation and the one after that take up the challenge to finish the job. So the Jewish teaching is the alternative methods, which are widely prevalent, are not going to work. That means covenant, Brit, partnership means we're not going to get a perfect world by a miracle that God's going to bestow it from ahead. Mashiach is not going to come and make the world perfect for us. Not if you understand covenant properly. Covenant means we're not going to achieve the perfect world in Olam Haba. We're talking about this world, the flesh and blood world that you and I inhabit. Covenant means partnership. We're not going to achieve it by spiritual enlightenment. That's what Eastern religions are saying. Eastern religions are saying is if you will think through, life is an illusion. You want to live perfection, you have to become spiritually enlightened. You have to release from the life of the body, the life of illusion and ego and ambition and achievement, and you will achieve nirvana. That'll be the perfect world. Covenant rejects that. And last but not least, as I said, the last 200 years of secular revolutions that said we get rid of God here, but we'll have communist perfection. We get rid of God and we'll have the Nazi perfection. We'll get rid of God and we'll have Maoism. That, of course, will not work either, because it leads to all these excesses and destruction. So what's the alternative? The divine method of covenant and partnership means you accept the world as it is, and you combine it with the world that you can envision, the world of perfection, and step by step you try to move the world as it is toward the world as it should be. So here, of course, the Torah itself tells us the story of covenant. God started out as a perfectionist. God still wants a perfect world, but after the Mabul, what happened to Mabul was that God was so frustrated and so disturbed by human misbehavior, by the abuse, that God said, I'm going to wipe out and start all over again. After the flood, God, as it were, changes strategy. That's the beginning of covenant. The first step, said the Torah, God says, I will establish natural law. There will never again be floods that are punishment because you acted wrongly. There will never again be catastrophes that I inflict because you behaved the wrong way. There's going to be a natural order, which will, by the way, the price you pay for a natural order is that evil people and good people are under the same circumstances. The Gemara says, if we had a world that was not covenantal natural law, so if there's adultery, then there would be a child. But it doesn't work that way. The sperm and the egg connect. There's a child, whether the intercourse itself was legitimate or invalid. So God has made a self-limiting choice. That's what greed is about. God says, I will not disrupt the natural order. I will let it grow and develop. I will work in partnership, not impose perfection. And that's where we go from then on. The process of accepting the world as it is, keeping the vision of direction in mind, and then working from one to the other. Let me give another example from our Torah, from our halakha. It's, of course, food and vegetarianism. The Torah's ideal in a perfect world, vegetarian. Because no human being, nobody should live by killing other organisms. So in the Garden of Eden, we're told in the chapter 1 of Bereshit, everyone was, even animals were assigned vegetarians. Now, after the flood, when God says, I will accept human limitations, meat is permitted. That's where the Torah for the first time permits meat with restrictions. That's what kashrut is about. Kashrut is if you want to be vegetarian, everything is kosher. But if you want to eat meat, we restrict it. It's a form of teaching you respect for life. It's a form of reminding you that our ultimate goal is not the world in which we kill animals, but in the world in which we savor life itself. And in fact, in the being predicted in the Messianic age, not only will we become vegetarians again, but even lions, right, will eat grass. Even wolves will lie down with lambs. Although I'm mindful of Woody Allen's famous line, when the lion lies down with the lamb doesn't sleep very well at night. So, but that's the point. In the imperfect world, it's a little dangerous. But we work toward that perfect world, and yes, that world will be vegetarian. So I tell people, enjoy the steak as quickly as you can before Mashiach comes. Now, next slide. So how does covenant work in actual practice? Make it very quick and very simple. The answer is there are, I call 6 steps, or 12 steps, I should say. These are the first 6. It starts with love. Hashem loves the world. Hashem loves the Jewish people. That's why Hashem is willing to enter into a covenant and partnership. As it says in the Vernon, right? Me'avat Hashem eschem, vayikar b'chem. Or Me'avat Hashem, our ancestors, vayikar b'zorim machmeim. It starts with God loving us, and of course we respond with love and back. That's what Yahav Hashem is all about. So out of love we enter into a partnership to make the world perfect. And of course the big step forward is you take a love and you make it into commitment. That's the second step of covenant. You turn it into an obligation. This is not just I'll do this because I'm in a good mood, because I'm loving you right now. What about tomorrow morning? I wake up in the morning and I'm not feeling so loving. The answer is that's what bring is about. Make a commitment. I'm going to live my whole life. I'm going to be disciplined. I'm going to do it on the days I don't feel very loving. That's my commitment. And of course, the third step of brit is you form a community. In the case of Jewish people, our covenantal communities of Jewish people, of like-minded people who share this obligation, are willing to try and work together. And then you start where you are, wherever you are, in life, in geography, in economy. Start right there to make the world better. And of course, once you start, you will discover the truth. You're not alone. When you start to improve the world, Hashem is with you. That's what we're trying to teach in our Torah. The B'nai Brit, the people who share this Brit with you, are with you. Other Gentile religions and other peoples share this vision with us. They're with you, so you're not alone. You just have to start. And what's the key act when you start? Is to choose life. What does that mean? It means that every act of yours, if you stop and think about it, don't just act, think about it. You're about to eat. You're about to talk. You're about to go to work. You name it. You're about to study. The answer is, this is the Torah's teaching. Every moment of life is a moment where you can choose between life and death. When you choose to eat, if you don't eat, choose not to eat, you're going to die. When you choose to eat, if you choose to eat healthy food, you will live. And if you're not choosing wisely, if you're choosing unhealthy junk food, you will die. So in a sense, that's what Kashrut is trying to teach us, that every act of eating should be consciously maximized to maximize life, either the life of the animal you're about to eat or life, your own healthy life. So literally every act of life, I'm about to speak a word. The next word, what do I say? Is it a word that honors the person I'm speaking to? Is it a word that recognizes their uniqueness? Is it a word that honors their dignity, the equality? Or is it a word that puts them down? That's what Lashon Hara is. Doesn't matter if it's true or not. If you're saying bad things about people and they don't need to know about it, it's an avera. It's a violation of the Tselem Elokim of the other person. So Rambam points out in the Torah, this is Moshe's last summary of the Torah in late Torah, and he says, Rei anochi noseinu v'necha hayom et hachayim v'et hatov et hamovet v'et hara. Rambam says, look how the Torah structures it. Chayim and Tov are together, life and good are together, Mavet and Ra, evil and death are together. Says Rambam, that's the definition of a good act, of a mitzvah, is this a choice of life. The definition of an evil, in some way it's a choice of death. Maybe it's a choice of degrading life. Maybe it's a choice of dismissing another person. In the end, that is the halachic life, that's the conscious life, where literally every act, before you do it, you stop and measure, how do I maximize life? How do I minimize death or evil or negative fallout? That method of maximizing life and minimizing death is what it means to live a halachic life, and that applies to every area of dress, that's every area of activity, every area of life behavior. Next slide. No, there's one slide before that missing. Oh, sorry, excuse me. Okay, thank you, good. The second half of the equation describes how we get there in terms of change and perfection. As I said, Hashem says, if you're going to live with people, you have to start by accepting their flaws and compromise. If you're going to insist on perfect vegetarianism, you're going to not do justice, you have to be willing to compromise. If you insist on perfect behavior, you're going to have to compromise. What do? Improve it a little bit at a time. Let me give a very concrete case, because this will strike to the issues we're facing together. Right? The ideal of the Torah is that men and women are equal, and of course they're free. They should be free as part of their dignity. But the Torah was given a world where slavery existed. So the Torah did not abolish slavery overnight. What does it do covenantally? You improve one step at a time. What's the first step? That for Hebrew slaves, you can be a slave for a maximum of 6 years. And during the 6 years, on Shabbat, you're free. 1 day a week, you're a free person, because Shabbat is the perfect day. Step by step, and it won't come Torah Shel Peh Chazal and say, it's not good enough. You want to treat them as a slave? We haven't abolished it yet, but how about you have to give equal work, equal right, equal treatment, equal food, equal lodging, equal dress, equal treatment, step by step until slavery is abolished. And let me give a more specific example. Women. In the world where the Torah was given, what was the condition of women? I would argue the answer is obvious. They were chattels. They were bought and sold. No one had any question that they were the second sex, but they were the usable sex. They were items of commerce. What does the Torah do? It doesn't abolish overnight, say we're all equal. What it does, we'll look at Mishpatim, it says from now on, only one person can sell a woman, that's the father, can sell his daughter. And who does he sell his daughter to? Only to somebody who will marry her. And once she's married, she has to be treated like a free wife and a free person. And if not, she goes free. Again, it's pretty far from Tzemel Elokim in my mind, but that is the classic covenantal approach. You state where the world is, and you go to the next step of improvement, restriction, improvement. What's the step after that? Well, that step has been going on now for 3,000 years, right? And it's not finished. And I think it's become one of the issues of our time, certainly in traditional Jewish circles, but to me that's exactly the point. The covenant says you don't stop until you get to the final stage when they are full Tzelem Elokim. Now, if my wife were here, she would point out that doesn't rule out the possibility of different roles and different behaviors, but not as an excuse or behind inequality and second-class citizenship. So we can argue, my wife and I do argue often about what's the definition of equality in terms of women's participation, but her point was only that women full learning, women full leadership, women full capacity to participate and lead in the community is an intrinsic step or next step towards Tzelem Elokim being realized. So if you understand that, you make the change at a human scale, one people at a time, one country at a time, one city at a time. On a human pace, you can't go that fast. I've given 2 examples of how it's one step at a time. By human emotion, meaning you have every right to start with your own family. Go by human emotions. Unlike Mao Zedong, who tried to break up the family, unlike Stalinism that said we override individual families for the sake of the universal equality, the Jewish answer is the reverse. Respect families. Start with the fact that your own family is closest to you. Take care of your family and become a model for other people. Take care of their family till we take care of the whole world. And of course, human models. Who's going to lead this process of constant change and development? The answer is human beings. We don't have in Judaism the idea that God comes down and becomes human in order to lead us in this struggle. We don't have this idea, I take it back, we do have it, but that we have some perfect superhuman who leads us. Hasidic rabbis and others will excuse me. In the end, Judaism says the models are human beings, like us. If you look at the record of the Torah, the Avos are not perfect. David HaMelech is not perfect. The Jewish people is not perfect. But you know something? You could be like them. You can be failed, you can sin, Moshe can fall down, but you can get up and do it better. So the Jewish dream is that we will get to this perfect world by human models and of Jewish people meant to serve as a model. If this goes on from generation to generation, and it will take many generations to get it, then you have to raise the next generation to take up this responsibility and to see the vision. And finally, and this is what I'm going to finish with, renewal and maturation. This is my biggest chiddush in the book. But the Torah's vision of Brit, this commitment we made from Sinai on until we get to Messianic days, that Brit is eternal, but it doesn't mean it never changes and never renews. The big contribution of Chazal was to teach us. And in fact, there have been major transformation points along this road through history and Brit. And I give you the obvious case. When we started it in the Torah, it's a Brit of Sinai, it's the Brit of Noach, it's the Brit of Abraham. But that Brit is very much God as a partner, but a dominant partner. God controls just about everything. God intervenes with miracles. Yetziat Mitzrayim. God did almost the whole job with all these miracles. God tells you what you want to do, what he wants you to do. He sends you a Navi, speaks from heaven, right? I mean, it reminds me of Samuel Levinson, the comedian in America, used to say, his father was very domineering, used to say to him, when I want your opinion, I'll give it to you. Now, when Hashem wants our opinion, he gives it to us. He sends a Navi to tell you, Ko Amar Hashem, do it exactly this way. And there's no two ways about it. So it's very much of a piece of a partnership in which one partner is very much dominant. And frankly, and if you listen to God, it rains. And if you don't listen to God, it doesn't rain. And if you obey God, God will defeat your enemies. And if you don't obey God, then you will lose to your enemies, even though you're a big army. That's the dominant form of partnership. It's still a partnership in the biblical period. Chazal came along and said, Hashem, as it were, self-limited again. This is the major transformation of the Brit. Before the Churban brought it out. Before the Churban, Chazal said, God has self-limited again. What does it mean? It means God is no longer visible as God was in the biblical period. God is no longer going to intervene with open miracles like splitting the Red Sea. It's not going to happen anymore. God is going to work in a hidden form. And here's the paradox. God becomes more hidden, but comes closer. In the biblical period, this dominant God, you couldn't go close. If you got close, you touched the Beit HaMikdash, you went to the wrong room, you would drop dead. If you touched the Aron, you'd be electrocuted. But now Hashem has dialed down the voltage and become Shekhinah. Shekhinah, of course, it's a feminine image, but it's close, it's loving, it's available. And so paradoxically, God is not visible, but God is closer and more participatory. So the whole life becomes ways of encountering Kedusha. Before you could have a holy meal in the Beit HaMikdash for a sacrifice, now you can have it at home, eating a kosher meal and making a bracha. Before, God spoke from heaven, and God sent you a prophet to tell you what to do. Now Hashem is coming closer, will not tell you. If you want to know what God wants, human beings, rabbis, will study the tradition, study the past, and estimate what is Hashem asking us right now. Lo b'shamayim, it's not in heaven anymore. And so God's hiddenness and God's coming closer is not to abandon us, not to distance, but just the opposite. To call human beings into fuller responsibility and participation. And in fact, the most powerful expression of this, Chazal developed Talmud Torah. Every individual in the biblical period, only a handful could read, only a handful could study. Talmud Torah meant that every Jew would participate and know the tradition. And you needed to know the tradition because God was not visible. So how do you know that God is there? The answer is you study Torah. The answer is you make a bracha. The answer is you say a tefillah. Now, this I finish with this. My argument in the book is that we're living through the third tzimtzum, or the third stage of this brit. If the first stage, God was totally dominant, in the second stage, humans become more active partners. According to Chazal, the destruction of the temple, of the second temple, happened because of our sins, but very different. The first temple was because of Avodah Zarah, Shvichas Damim. The second temple is because we were given human responsibility, acted badly, recklessly, sinas chinam, civil war, reckless revolt. Now my argument is, we are living through the third and final, if you will, messianic stage of the Brit. In my time and your time, God is totally hidden. In our time and my time, God is totally hidden, but that means, according to Chazal, God is totally present. That means every place there is holiness. Every place there is God, only I have to uncover it and come and touch it. That is the challenge of our time. If Chazal widened it from the Beis HaMikdash to the home, our task is to widen it from the home to the lab, to the school, to the industry, to the street, to the gym. And my argument is quite simply, in this, if you think I'm exaggerating, let me give the obvious proof of what I'm talking about. The great message of modernity was the response to Hashem's tzimtzum, calling humans to take full responsibility. What modernity said to people is, take power in history, you can improve your life, you can improve the world, you can save the world. You can overcome poverty and hunger and sickness by science, by medicine, by industry, by technology. That was its power, and it has made remarkable achievements. But, in a sense, this is a tragedy. Because in the process of taking power, humans lost sight of the fact that this is a covenant, this is a partnership. They basically went out of control. And therefore you have now industry not only creating wealth, but global warming and species destruction. You have a world in which climate change threatens the very structure of the planet. Again, out of the good things that we're doing, to raise the standard of living, to improve life, but because they have lost the sense of covenant, accountability to God, this is God's creation, and the recognition of its own working with the other. So that's the challenge, I argue, of my time. If we follow the model of Chazal, that means we would expand the halacha to cover every area. I tell people Shabbat tells us what to do when you don't work on Saturday. But Shabbat Malacha is a model of creative work that should be applied to the weekday. How do you do creative work that brings to the Kulam? And not just social action. How about when you do construction? How about building homes and building colonies and communities that enhance human dignity? How about, you name the area. How about in medicine, developing a medicine that respects the patient, that lets them participate covenantally in their own cure, that understands they're not just simply objects of experimentation. So this is the main challenge of our time, to expand the halakha, to discover and to bring out the holiness and God's presence everywhere in the tzelem elokim of the person next door. That's one of the great challenges of our time, to discover and affirm that tzelem elokim and dignity of every human being. The classic case that, of course, the Orthodox community is working with now is gay, homosexuality, LGBTs. To come to recognize that it's not to be, that there is a natural, a genetic, a substantive basis. This is not perverse or immoral behavior. Of course it can be, but the vast majority of people who have chosen this are acting in response to the natural capacity for love that God has given them. So the challenge is, how do you integrate their tzelem elokim into the tradition? And I believe it's possible. But this is the example I'm trying to give of how we have a major moment of development and of articulation where we apply the values, not to dismiss them, but to apply them to every new area. So we expand halakha, we expand participation. That, I think, is what we're talking about in terms of women. To expand the participation of more people, just as Chazal said, we no longer rely just on Kohanim and Nevi'im, but everybody can be Talmud Torah. Then we add, and 50% more can learn Talmud and do a Siyam HaShas and participate in every other way in learning. So this is the unmet and final challenge of our time. Expand holiness, expand halakha, to expand the universal tzelem elokim and recognize it not just in men and women, but in Jews and non-Jews, and people of color and people of disabilities. And of course, this is the Jewish dream. In a generation when we can achieve this level of overcoming poverty and hunger and sickness, we are within striking distance of the Jewish dream. And the Jewish people in this country, in this land of Israel, and its communities can be or lagoyim, literally, an example that we understand what God is calling us to do. And just as Zionism was the insight of the secular Jews first, that God has asked us to take power, to protect ourselves, to build a new life, so I would argue this is our moment to take power in politics and economics, in halakha, in religious life, and show the whole world that the Jewish dream is within at hand. And not just Jews, but all the world together with Hashem can make this partnership that brings the world closer to the triumph of life, which our tradition predicts in the face of destruction, in the face of suffering, in the face of war. The Torah ends with that message, the Nevi'im end with that message of the final victory of life. And we are called to be that army that fights for that final victory. Thank you.
It works. We're going to take a few questions. Firstly, thank you very much to Rabbi Yitz Greenberg. The 6 years I'm spending on my doctorate could just be summarized in an hour, as you can see. I would like to offer people the opportunity to ask Rabbi Yitz any questions that you may have. Does anyone have any questions? No questions at all?
One question that I have is, I understand that expanding halakha, but seems like some things would need to fall away, and I give a very simple example of the Sheba Amim, the ones that were supposed to be killed from man, woman, children, everybody, according to the Torah. So that's an example of something that how can we live with that and the Messianic era?
So it's a good question, but the answer you really have given, the answer is Chazal already before us. Along the way, and at that stage of history, it was a war to the death of it, and really I believe in simply because the existing or the continuing existence of idolatry in the midst of the Jewish people wouldn't have assimilated and lost its way. But Chazal already assumed that we have now matured. That was their accomplishment, in fact, to raise a more mature, more intelligent, more informed laity, and therefore they assume that we don't need to wipe out Shem. The way they handle it is very simple. They say, Bos and Cherub, the 7 nations have been all mixed together, so there's no longer identifiable 7 nations, and therefore you can't practice this. It's like the Ben Sorah Morah too. Along the way in the Torah opened to the possibility of a Ben Sorah Morah being executed. Chazal come along and say, it's not going to happen, it never happened, never will happen. And again, this is not a repudiation of the Torah, because they say, Drosh v'kabel schar, it's a statement of value and of condemnation of a certain type of behavior. But the practice is different because we're at a different stage of mature responsibility. And I would argue the same holds true today. In other words, yeah, I have no doubt one can find sources in the tradition. I mean, how about Meir Kahana? How about the whole, this whole Mishpat HaMelech, sort of Ginsburg, who are saying they have a right to kill Arabs, even children, because they're a future enemy. You can find sources that justify it, but what Chazal taught us was the opposite. If we keep in mind Salam Elokim, we keep in mind the goal, then we will find ways of making this not doable or not permissible, but rather on the contrary. Now again, one can't be naive. You have to have an army, you have to protect yourself. But from the army to protect itself, if necessary, to wanton abuse and killing and oppression, that's the abuse. And it's very important that you ask that question, because it's important that religious Jews understand that the tradition can be misused. And if you lack the dynamic understanding of Greek, sometimes it's even easier to misuse, because you can find these precedents and try to apply them today. But today there would be an obscenity rather than a constructive contribution. Yeah.
If life is the ultimate goal, right? We are taught that there's something above life, and that's where Kiddush Hashem comes in. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had to give up our lives throughout history. נכון על קידוש השם. מעבר לחיים יש את הדבר היותר חשוב, right? How do you explain that?
No, so again, it's a very important point, and these are all good examples of how you apply the Greek dynamic. The answer is, life is the overriding value. How is that expressed halakhically? In such things as Pikuach Nefesh. Pikuach Nefesh overrides 610 of the 613 commandments. It makes very clear that the Torah's ultimate value is about life. You can be Machal Shabbos, it's not even a chilul, it's Bechuya, says Rambam. You can feed people treif on Yom Kippur to save their life. So it's very clear. It's very clear that the overriding goal is to uphold life. Having said that, now you're asking that, and it's a very important. But there are 3 commandments which the Torah says, or the rabbis say, it's worth dying for. Avodah Zarah, Gilei Arayah, Shvich Hasdon. Why? Because if they win, life would be destroyed. Chazal really felt if idolatry ever won, the basis of life, which is the infinite God who supports the infinite value of Tzelem Elokim, then human beings were worth nothing. Look what happened exactly in Nazism. In the name of destroying the Jewish people, believing in destroying God, that's what they're trying to do. Right? Total degradation. So at that point, if there's no choice, Kiddush Hashem is the ultimate mitzvah, because it's a way of upholding the value of life. So yes, Kiddush Hashem. Now, what's the equivalent today? My answer is, if we had no choice, yes, that's certainly the way. But Rambam pointed out already, if you do have a choice, then it's not a mitzvah to die. So how do we express Kiddush Hashem in our lifetime? I'm thinking of Menachem Zinva in the Warsaw Ghetto, who said the answer is when we had no choice and we were totally weak, yes, we gave our life on Kiddush Hashem. He said, but now the mitzvah would be to fight and to stop the evil. That's Kiddush Hashem. And I add to that what he and several others taught, and Kiddush Hashem of Kiddush Chayim, of daily life. The Kiddush Hashem of showing people, and that would be very important as religious people show. That I take life more seriously. I take your need more to heart. I feel that's a Kiddush Hashem. In the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan said that I never take meat on credit for my butcher because people shouldn't think that the rabbi is getting a free meat because he's the mashgiach. So it's a Kiddush Hashem that is showing that religion means a higher standard of ben adam l'chavero, a higher standard of respect for life of mutual people.
I wanted to ask about, you spoke about endless life. So I wanted to ask if life is endless, is Ru still a mitzvah? And then if not, are there other mitzvot that become null and void or have a different context once we get to Messianic times?
I love that question, of course. I mean, I'm looking forward to having to answer that as a serious shayla in the Messianic ages that comes. So the honest answer is, I myself am wrestling, what are the implications of everything I'm saying here? And the honest answer is, I don't have a quick answer in most of these cases. I think we're going to find out together. I do worry that some of the changes that I've strongly supported, could they undermine the tradition? I have no guarantee. Could they go out of control? Yes. And so I understand the risk, and that's Ashrei Adam B'Fachei Tamid. I think one should be very careful. But having said that, I think we have to have the courage. Rav Soloveitchik has a really wonderful mamor about Tzalma Elokim. He said, you know, why did God give us all these qualities of Tzalma Elokim to be godlike? What's that about? He said, you know why? Because it's a mitzvah, it's a halacha. Shlucho shel Adam kamota. If you want a messenger, if you want to appoint an agent, if you want to appoint a representative, you need somebody who's like you, who understands exactly what you want and need, so they can truly represent you as your agent and as you shlichut. So, Rav says, so if God gave us all these godlike qualities, why did God do that? Because God wants shlucho shel Adam kamota. He wants us to do the work that God wants to do, but He wants to do it through us. So what's the application of that? Well, of course, tikkun olam, miracles, healing life, splitting the Red Sea and saving Jews. How about, by political action? By political action, the Jewish people rescued 1 million Russians in exodus from Soviet Union. We used the powers that God gave us, including political activity and politics and all kinds of connections, to save and bring up 1 million people from slavery to freedom. So I apply it to your question. My answer is, personally, that is the challenge of our time, to use those talents. And because we're in this time, this is my point, this is our shlichut. I feel there was a time 100 years ago, 200 years ago, I thought we had the courage of the Orthodox rabbis at that time who said no to modernity. Because everybody else was saying yes, and they were disappearing. So they felt the only thing you can say, just say no to defend the tradition. But that's not what we are today. Today we're in a situation where people ask, give me some religious guidance. How do I live with the reality? I have gay people in my family. I know they're not perverts. I see they want to live together in marriage because they want to have a family. They want to do all the things that the halakha is asking us to do. So you can make it fake it. You can say, like parents, you can say, well, my children didn't happen to my children. It's a faking it. The honest answer is, if you're a serious rabbi, take it seriously. It's a phenomenon. And then my answer is, figure out, give halakhic guidance. How do you live a moral life as a gay person? How do you live a truly sexually responsible life as a gay person? How do you create a family as a gay person? Again, I may make a mistake, I may give the wrong direction, but I feel that is the responsibility of the rabbi and of the community in this generation. And so on down the line. I mean, uppity women, a lot of people are nervous, uppity women, it's going to undermine the whole tradition. Maybe. I hope not. I think the reverse. I think we're seeing it in Montana, we're seeing it so at the Shas, that when women are admitted to leadership, there's an expansion of Torah, there's an expansion of learning, expansion of holiness. So my answer is, let's go with it. Then you'll have shilas, all kinds of interesting shilas will come up, which we'll have to answer. So I hope your question will come up too, when we get to that point. In the interim, in the short period, until we achieve overcome those, my answer is Puru, and that's one of the great accomplishments of the state of Israel. I want to point that out to you. That the value of family and children has been high. So this is the only advanced economic country in the whole OECD worldwide that has this high a birth rate. Around the world, more education and more wealth correlates with less children ZPG, negative population growth. So it's a real accomplishment of values that we intend to tell people, even though you're wealthier and having more resources, your commitment to be part of life and to expand human life remains at the same high level. So you can use that money to develop a better education for your child. You can use that money to develop a better range of experiences for your family, to help more people. So I hope that your question is one of many questions we'll have to face together, but I think the great opportunity for our generation is to tackle them now and start now to see how much we can broaden and include in the tradition. That is an application, not a rejection, not a reform. It's an application of Selma Elohim to the next generation and to a higher level.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. I know that this evening has been both inspiring, enriching, enlightening for so many of us here, and we really thank you for bringing these ideas to the world. We wish you many, many good years of health so you continue doing what you do. Thank you very much. We're going to move to the second part of the evening. Do you want to say anything?
Actually, as you know, Blue Greenberg was supposed to be here tonight to give the Torat Chayim JJ Greenberg Young Leadership Award to the winner who was here in our midst tonight. Unfortunately, Blue was feeling ill. She had a bit of bronchitis and could not come out. So instead, our first thought was maybe I might read her words for her, but we have a much better answer. We have in the audience a fellow Rabbinic, a fellow Matan person, Ms. Judith Goody-Wild, JJ's sister, who will read the award. I'll stand by and I will hand her the certificate when we get there.
On the gravestone of my brother JJ, Natan Yosef HaKohen Zichrono Livracha, are inscribed these words from Tehillim: Chesed ve'emet nifgashu, tzedek v'shalom yishaku. Loving kindness and truth met each other, justice and peace embraced. In addition to faithful observance of mitzvot, in which he took great pride and felt a sense of privilege, JJ was equally serious about treatment of other human beings, ben adam l'chavero. He respected every human being as a tzelem Elohim and expressed chesed towards others in many ways, such as giving total attention and listening, helping others when in need, remembering their birthdays, treasuring their children, and more. In a room full of people, JJ gravitated to those at the margins to bring them in. He expressed emet in acknowledging the truth. He would critique and improve what was wrong rather than defend or cover up a problem in the system. He fought for tzedek, justice, for those who could not fight for it for themselves. And he practiced tzedek in establishing community policies. And shalom, shlemut. He lived a holistic life in embracing all Jews. In the spirit of shalom, he shared Judaism and mitzvot as a joyful relationship to all of life. In his enjoyment of music, culture, sports, exercise, travel, and many other things, he modeled for many others the fulfillment of Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha. So establishing this Young Leadership Award in memory of JJ within the Torat Chayim organization of Orthodox rabbis was a natural. This is a group that affirms the Torah of Chesed, that speaks to the truth to power, even against an establishment when it acts wrongly. Torat Chayim consistently supports halakha rulings directed towards tzedek, ve'emet, v'chesed, v'shalom. It was also a natural for the judges of Torat Chayim to choose Emuna Klein Bar-Noy for the First JJ Greenberg Young Leadership Award. Reading about her varied and manifold accomplishments, one immediately understands that her life is guided by these principles of chesed, emet, tzedek, and shalom. All the more remarkable because she has already shown these qualities and accomplished so much at the young age of 25 and as a wife and mother of 2 young children. Her accomplishments are too numerous to even itemize here, so I will just refer to a few of them. She studied for 2 years at Migdal Oz Seminary and is now completing a degree in political science. She is the vice president of the organization Nechushdan, did I say that correctly? That works to ensure that all children in kindergarten are vaccinated. She worked to bring more women to mikveh observance, including her role as one of the major players in the effort to allow women to immerse in the mikveh on their own trust, i.e. without a balanit supervising, a measure which passed in the Supreme Court and the Knesset. In 2013, she lobbied for the implementation of a decision taken by the government in 2006 to create an alternative institution to psychiatric hospitalization for women who had suffered sexual abuse. In 2015, Beit Elah, the alternative to hospitalization, opened its doors. She was co-founder and leader of the egalitarian minyan in Katamonim, Kivilat Roni. Also in the area of protecting vulnerable women, she was part of a group that founded a village for long-term treatment for women suffering from the post-trauma of sexual violence. Emuna was the head of the board for Ohelah for a period and ran the campaign to raise the funds to build it. She served as coordinator of several youth groups in the Open House in Jerusalem, a haven for LGBTQ youth, to help find support and guidance as they navigated a very difficult period in their lives. And lest you think that all of this responsibility would have gotten her down, she is part of a group called Feministiot Datiot Lelo Chush Humor, a humorous pushback against those who say that feminists asking for equality have no sense of humor. In that group, she is referred to as a rising star of religious feminism. And all of this is summed up in the judgment of the committee that described her as extremely talented, compassionate, passionate, articulate, witty, and the most wonderful character, and even the most wonderful character that she is. Tonight, on behalf of the Torat Chayim Association of Orthodox Rabbis, with 250 member Rabbanim and Rabbiniot in Israel, America, and Europe, and with the blessing of our family, we are pleased to present the First Torat JJ Greenberg Young Leadership Award in Israel for the year 2020 to Emuna Klein Bar-Noy. The award carries with it a certificate and an award of $1,000 to pursue your amazing ongoing works. And will now please accept this certificate and share your reflections with us.
Thank you so much. I would like to please begin by thanking the Greenberg family and the Torat Chayim organization for awarding me this prize. It's truly very humbling, and I'm honored and very moved by your choice to support the causes I try to stand by. So thank you very much. We have this ongoing debate in our house lately because my almost 3-year-old is starting to learn how to read numbers. And he's pointing them out on buses and signs, and he asks us to draw the number 4, and number 8, and number 9 on the window when it's cold outside. but he will not accept the existence of letters. A few weeks ago, I pointed at something and said, this is number 4, and I said, no, sweetheart, this is the letter C. And he said, no letter, number, no letter. And since we find this hilarious, we keep bringing it up. And every time we bring it up, his insistence that letters do not exist just grows. Just this morning, my partner Abishai asked him, well, sweetie, is it possible to have both numbers and letters in the world? To which he answered by turning the argument even more extreme, looking at us with his cute, stubborn child face and saying, no letters, no numbers, only cookies. Now, this kind of blindness by choice is very adorable in an almost 3-year-old, but not so adorable as we grow up. And I think that a great part of the challenge that I had a privilege of hearing for the past hour is realizing that at a certain point, even a very young person such as myself has to recognize the fact that there are experiences and realities in the world which are true and very real, even if I don't understand them. And even if I don't get all their implications and all the experiences that are tied up with these realities. I was asked a few months ago to write to the committee awarding the prize about my general thoughts, which was hard. And I ran them by my partner here, and he said they were boring, but I'm going to share them with you anyway, since you're my captive audience. We were told that when Bet HaMikdash Nechrav, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was cast over to 4 amot of halacha, which sounds like a really small space. And there is something to be said about looking at things that we don't totally understand and making space for them in our consciousness that can help them thrive. When we look at people that we don't understand, that we don't get them, and we respect them without demanding that they explain their existence to us. Women suffering from PTSD, LGBTQ children and youth, for example, or just people from another gender. When we care about their happiness and their pain, when we care about creating their happiness and preventing their pain, we create a space that can exist also outside of halacha, that can exist with thought, that can exist with compassion, with love, with kindness, that can also exist with other human emotions, like anger and sadness. Again, I would like to thank you very much for awarding me this. I feel like on a personal level, it's obviously very meaningful, but moreover, having your support for the causes I stand by is extremely moving. And I hope you all have a wonderful evening and get home not too late. Thank you very much.
Thank you all once again for joining us. I wish everyone a safe journey home and a good evening.
Yeah, it was okay. It was good for me.
He wasn't feeling the audience so much. You wanted him to dance. And then during the Q&A, he turned the camera.
Yeah, I said like some like reactions. I want to react